Now I'm gonna do a quick video on the basics of Google Earth. So start off, Google Earth is a program designed by Google and it's based on, as you can see here, a 3D representation of Earth based on primarily on satellite imagery. And we're going to use this as part of the mapping and GIS component of our course or subject. Dito, there are two types or two variants of Google Earth. The one is, as you can see in the screen right here, is the web-based program or web-based software. So you go to google.com/earth, or just like what I did, Google Earth, and from there you can actually launch Google Earth, and it's gonna open up a new tab in your window. And let's wait for it a little bit to load, and here we go. So now it's rendering the place. So if you don't recognize this is the runway in Dumaguete with Imes over here. Well, here, this small part here. So the beauty of, or the thing I like about the Google Earth, the web browser, web-based Google Earth, is that it actually can render images pretty quickly and with good image quality as compared to the desktop one. And however, one of the fallbacks of the web-based Google Earth is there's really nothing much that you can do with it aside from look for the places, or do a Voyager where you can actually look at landmarks and random places here and there. So we're gonna go back, focus here, and you can actually make different projects where you put, but this is actually irrelevant to our GIS software. Now also you can actually measure distances and areas here. So for example, you can measure the entire length of the runway here. So you're just gonna do a zoom in a little bit, select the point here, zoom out, and zoom it right back here. Oh. There we go. So now we have the entire runway is actually 1898.90 meters, and you can change that into meters or kilometers or centimeters even. And we have the imperial measurements here. Smooth. What the hell? So a smooth is a non-standard humorous unit of length created as part of the MIT fraternity rank. Going back, and again we can actually measure the area here. So again, so let's say we just want to take this little square here. Shape. So again, we're not going to use smooth. Kilometers, so the perimeter, so this entire length of the square is 0.18 kilometers, but the area is 2000.66.43 meters square. Okay, aside from that, the measurement of areas and distances, there's not really much to go on with this. So here, now let's close this one up, and here is the desktop version of Google Earth. Previously it was just Google Earth, and the Google Earth Pro, you can see here, was actually a paid service or a paid program, but thanks to the kind-hearted people in Google, they actually made it into free software. So first and foremost, this is the interface. So you have your places here, the layers, and you have this navigational tool, so and so on and so forth, and you have the toolbar here. Okay, so first I'd like to discuss this on the top left, on the bottom left layer or bottom left corner are the layers. So the layers actually are used for labeling certain stuff or certain items or objects in your map. Okay, so as you can see, I checked all the boxes and it gives me a loads of information here, like a photo over there. What's this one? Manuyod Mini Beach House, which is not really in Manuyod, and so on and so forth. So again, since Google Earth is actually a community-driven system, so there are a lot of areas here where you can actually that are not actually accurate, or it's just because people put them there, or so on and so forth, and based on the Google's databases. For the mapping purposes, I actually uncheck them all, except maybe for the borders and labels, and sometimes if I need to show the roads, I actually click it. I actually activate it. But you know, there are times that this too, the roads can produce some obscure lines or lines that are not too tidy. That's why I turn them off and just have it right there, because in some most cases the roads are actually visible. So these are the layers. Second, the top right hand are the navigational tools. So first is this object over here, which is used to pan your view of the area. So you can have it more of a flatter lay, so to speak, so you can look at the map at a certain angle and you can see the curvature of the globe. But for mapping purposes, again, you want it to be as flat out as possible. So you want to have a very good bird's eye view of the place rather than have it at an angle. This is so that it will be easier for you to do mapping and to have more accurate, and you can pinpoint certain locations more easily rather than accurately, but accuracy can be a part of the objective there. And secondly, outside of this small ring where you can actually look around is this translucent ring, which is function is you'll be able to navigate or control the orientation of your map. Since we are doing mapping, we always want our map to face the true north. True north meaning that it's just pointing north. So the map is in correct alignment to true north. The easiest way to do that is you click the little N here, and as you can see, if I hover the cursor there and click N to reset to north. You always want to have a map that's reset or set at the true north. Okay, next one is this part over here is just to move around. So but you can always click on the map and just drag it, but if you want to make minuscule or minute adjustments, you can do so using this. It's just a way to nudge the map altogether. So the last part of the navigational tools is the slider over here, which is basically just to zoom in and zoom out, which you can easily do. If you have a mouse, you can use the mouse wheel to just zoom out and push the mouse wheel forward to zoom in, or if you have a trackpad, you can use 2 fingers just to swipe up and down to zoom in and zoom out. Okay, so that's got it. So now we're done with some of the navigational features. Now let's move to the places. The places in this top right or semi-top right corner border of the program are actually the places that you've mapped out, imported from your GPS, or places that you actually input inside the software. So this works like this works similar to the layers in any GUI, not GUI, image manipulating software like Photoshop, GIMP, Affinity. So here, this is the mangroves of IMS. So you can just click this and it'll disappear. And so those are the places. And this will be useful later on when you're actually planning to do mapping, and if you want to remove any of the features or objects that you placed inside the map. And to have a cleaner map altogether. So next we'll be going with the toolbar. So we're gonna go at them one by one, and we're going to be skipping a few that I don't actually use or we don't really need. So first of all, this is the pin. The one with the pin icon is to add the place mark. So the place mark is actually clicking on the place mark gives you a dialog where you can actually name the place mark. So in this case, let's say that it's the border of runway north, so N for north, and it gives you the latitude and the longitude, so it gives you the coordinates. And the icon here, you can actually drag it and place it on the specific area that you want. So in this case, you want to be as close as possible to make sure it's a little bit more precise and accurate. And from there, you have your waypoint of the northern corner of the runway. Change it to corner. From there, having the place mark there, or the waypoint, you can actually edit it by changing its color style. So do you want it to be a little bit more opaque, or you want it to, or the label, you want it to be a little bit more opaque, or even the icon. And you can change the icon over here in this selection here. So there are a lot of icons readily available, but you can actually add your own icon in Google Earth if you have a specific icon that you want to use. But for this exercise, or for the sake of mapping, I actually prefer using the simpler ones. So the ones in white with a black outline, I prefer using this. So I'm gonna use this one here. Okay. So the reason I like using this one is because that, given that it's a crosshair like object, I can actually pinpoint in the center of the icon the more accurately rather. Okay. So okay, now there we have it. So now we try it again. This time, since we already made changes to the previous place mark in terms of the icons, the color, and what have you, it automatically changes the next icon altogether. So it's easier for us not to spend too much time in the editing part or the customization of the icons, and we can focus on the placing of the waypoints. And so corner of runway, so south, and we press OK. So what if you made a mistake and you want to change the location? So as you can see, this is the icon for the waypoint isn't really dead on accurate, and they want to change it. What you can do is double click or right click na lang and select properties. This gives you an option to move the icon to a more to a correct position. So, or you can just zoom in. Since this is a very rounded area, we can actually put it somewhere right here. So again, a lot of mapping involves a lot of human error, but as long as you are doing the mapping constantly and your error is constant, then statistically speaking, it should be negligible. Okay, so as a review, you have the name of the runway, the icon type that you're using, the coordinates right over here. Then in the tabs here, you can actually change or customize the colors, the opacity, and so on and so forth. And for the view, you also have a full detail of the coordinate there. And as for the altitude, you can actually change it, but since we're always doing things at ground level, we can just leave it at that. Okay, so the next bit that we're going to look at is to add a polygon. So the polygon is actually very useful. The polygon is actually useful if you want to highlight a certain area of the map. So let's say we're going to highlight this bit of the runway that's protruding through the shore or protruding through the island. So since we already have the corners of the runway set here, just click on that. There we go. And for the sake of argument, let's just put it where the beach and the runway end, and it should give you a preliminary shape. And lastly, we add the final piece here. Okay, so now we have a polygon. Again, you can edit it. So we want to put the runway, let's just say reclaim. And here we can change again the color. So we want it, maybe we can edit it, change the colors to a little bit of a red. Red for here also. So this one changes the lines and this one changes the area. And since we don't really want to obscure the structure, the runway, we can change the opacity. Let's just change the opacity of the fill. So let's give it 40% opacity. That should work. And one key measurement here is one key feature here is the measurements. So again, similar to the web-based Google Earth, you can actually put in you can actually get the measurements of the perimeter, so the area, the lines along the polygon, and the area that covers the entire shape or the entire polygon. You can change it into different units of measurements. Since it's an area, so it's usually in square meters or square kilometers or in hectares. So usually we use these three. Again, we use the standard metric system. We don't really particularly use the imperials, because the imperials are a little bit more complicated to convert and so on and so forth. So we're going to select square meter. So the area that's protruding, the protrusion of the runway to the sea or the reclaimed area is approximately 266 square meters or kilometers, and it's just gonna show up 0 because there's not enough measurements. So we'll just stick to square meters. Okay. Yeah. Next would be to function as the path. So the path actually is just a line, unlike the polygon where you can actually make it into a certain shape. It just follows a certain line, and you can actually, and you cannot close this, unlike the polygon. Okay, so this is useful for when you're mapping, let's say, a river system, because the river system isn't necessarily, don't really, or you oftentimes you don't really have to map out or get the width of the river. So I already have something here. So this is river system -1. So let's hide it and let's make a new one. So the path, you click it. So we'll start at the mouth. So approximately this is the mouth, and we just draw a line, making sure it's center of the river, just for the sake of accuracy. And since we really can't see anything more than that, so we can assume that these are like river flora rather. So we can just go on and follow the river. So let's just stop there. So okay, so now you have a line from this part of the river until the mouth. So what we can do next is customize it or edit it a little bit. So go back to properties. So again, so river system, or just river -1 or -2, because we already have a 1, although it's the same. So same thing, we can change the color. So since it's a river, we want it to be blue, despite it not being blue in real life. So just for the sake of the map, we can put it into blue, and we can change the width. So having changed the width means that it's actually much more clearer, or it's going to be clearer when you produce the map. You can do it by clicking endlessly here, or just putting the number there. And again, you can look at the measurement tab to see how far it is, or how long the river system that you've mapped out is. So in this case, we mapped out approximately 838 meters of the river, and for sure it will go farther beyond 838 meters, but for the sake of the exercise, let's just stick with this. Okay, so those are the three key features that we use in the mapping using Google Earth. Next is add image overlay. We don't really use this because Google Earth is more of a foundation, or it's the software where we actually map out certain areas, certain objects like rivers or certain structures, like for example the pier over here and so on. And we don't really record a tour and so on. And lastly is this part here. So this actually turns back the time on the map. So if you click on it, you can actually take a view of the area in different years. So in this case, this is recent. So with the slider here, you can actually slide it over. So 2010. Okay. So as you can see in the boulevard in 2010, there was no construction here and so on. There, as compared to now that there is construction. And this feature is actually useful if you're planning to make a time series based on maps on Google Earth, where you can actually see changes in the topography, the geography of the area. Okay. What next? Don't really use that because you already have the measurements. Okay, so going back to the places feature. So again, as I mentioned earlier, you can actually save the places or these objects that you put in the map, and you can actually save them as a different file format that would be recognizable by other software. So you can actually click save place as. So in this case, it is a KMZ file, and the KMZ file is recognizable by other software such as QGIS and Surfer, ArcGIS, and a lot of, because it's actually one of a few file formats that's recognizable, universally recognizable by mapping software or GIS software. Okay, and again, you can actually, aside from saving it from the Google Earth or exporting it from Google Earth, you can actually import some files from different programs. Let's say you're using QGIS and you want to import it into Google Earth. You can actually do so by clicking on File and selecting Import. So in this case, we just have to look for a file format. So let's go with the building. So there's no KMZ. It's just all files. That's not the one I'm looking for. Maybe this. We can try this. Okay, so that didn't really work. So let's try a different file format. Oh, here we go. So IMS fences. So you can actually use this since it's in a KMZ file. You can actually use KMZ file or .gpx files. .gpx files means that it's directly from your GPS device that you've used. Open it. As you can see, this is the fences that I imported, and this was done from a different software. I believe I used QGIS for this and saved it as a .kmz file, and there. And again, same with the other objects, we can actually edit it. So you want to change the color, maybe change it to a nice dark orange. Make it a little dark. There we go, just right. And you can change the width. So again, not too thick. So let's put it. So there you have it. So you can actually put the fence here. Again, so we've discussed the layers, which really we don't really use, the navigation features, that the places, how to save and how to import files, and we actually discussed a few of the toolbars here, and I think we're set. Oh, and one more thing is this part over here. So the tools. So with tools, you can actually click the GPS and you can actually import the files directly from your GPS into Google Earth. So here, so it's going to ask you what brand your GPS is, what items you're going to import, or even the tracks and the routes, and so on and so forth. And here it's going to ask you if it's the protocols that you're going to use and such. This is a little bit of a hassle to use, but it's for me it's easier just to plug in your GPS device into your computer, open it, and save the file, the GPX file, and convert it into a Word file, or an Excel file, which I will be talking about next, or in the next video, or in the next discussion. Okay, thank you.